Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host, as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 93 of the show, and this time we're actually on time. Yeah, we're actually on time this time because, well, I know I said time twice, but you get what I mean. Just a little bit of house cleaning real quick before we get into today's episode, because today is I wouldn't say more of a doozy, but it's more of a, I'm trying to really think how I want to describe this episode because it's a really interesting case to say the least, but get on with it, But house cleaning, obviously, thank you guys for coming back and supporting the show. It really means a lot to me. Obviously, we just hit over 1,300 total downloads. So again, thank you guys so much for your continued support. Really means a lot to me. In terms of personal stuff, obviously, yeah, like I've started online classes this week. It's a bit of a transition, my teachers are getting used to it. I'm getting used to it. It's the first time I've had to do this. So there's that, but it's a transition. It's not bad so far. Obviously, in terms of, running the show and everything, things are going great. We're still working out some kinks for future episodes. And then obviously, this is episode 93. So that means in 7 episodes, we're going to be doing the 100th episode special, which we're preparing for that because, we have plenty of time to prepare. Obviously, the new computer, as you guys have been following me on social media, for those of you that do, the new PC upgrades have been working very, very well, and I'm very happy. This will be the first episode where I actually get to try out, editing the show on the new rig, and, it's pretty much going from there. But aside from that, we can actually jump into today's episode because in this episode, we're going to be talking about the quote-unquote new iPad Pro. And yes, I know, before somebody says it, yes, I know, we're talking about the iPad Pro again, but, I don't get to pick it. Well, yes, I do get to choose in the topics, but you get what I mean. It's important because, it's the new iPad Pro. We knew this was coming. We were expecting to see the iPad Pro be shown off at WWDC, but due to the whole, in layman's terms, the human malware, we obviously aren't having that. So they released the new iPad Pros, they released the new MacBook Air, and it's interesting. The MacBook Air, I do think Apple, with what they did with the MacBook Air, was a good idea. Like changing the keyboard, upgrading the specs, upgrading the storage. I think it was a good idea because the MacBook Air has always been viewed as just, the basic laptop for students. That's what it's always viewed as. But with the new iPad Pros, and especially some of the accessories that are coming with it, which we will talk about later in the episode, that the new iPad Pro, I keep saying this and I say this again, the iPad Pros are my favorite product Apple has made in the last few years because they are just phenomenal pieces of hardware and software together. They're just incredible. And this one is no exception. However, I have some concerns. Not bad concerns, but just concerns, because when I view this iPad, the new iPad Pros, I view them as the way that the 2018 iPad Pro should have been from the start, if you get what I mean. And I'll explain what I mean, as I progress. But obviously, breaking down the new iPad Pros, because obviously that's what we're here to do. When we look at the new iPad Pros, yes, they look identical to the originals, like the 2018 ones. They look almost identical. The only upgrades that are actually visible are the cameras on the back. So let's talk about those real quick, because those aren't really the most essential things, but they are important because it added something new. So obviously the camera upgrade has been upgraded. We obviously, based on the Apple website, they're talking about the main sensor, the 12 megapixel wide camera. So that's the new one. And then they also added a new 10 megapixel ultra wide camera. I'm saying megapixel instead of megapixels because, you know, it's a joke with Juan that he always likes saying megapixels. So shout out to Juan. But they also added the LiDAR sensor. And this lame way of explaining what the LiDAR sensor, because I really don't want to go through this thing. It basically is just another nifty camera added to help enhance AR and, you know, depth sensing and things like that. So it's good. Like, it's not bad. Like, I think it's a great idea because, you know, I think AR is more interesting than VR, in my opinion. That's my opinion, you know, my opinion. So don't go saying that's what everyone thinks. No, my opinion is I think AR is more interesting of a concept and more of realistic push towards the future than VR is, but that's a whole different thing. And then obviously going into the specs, because I know that's what everyone cares about. Yes, these iPad Pros do come with updated specs. And there were some things that we actually didn't know until like people actually got their hands on these things. So inside the new iPad Pro, there is the A12Z. So this is not the A14X that we thought, or A13X. This wasn't those processors, and I'll explain why in a bit as we continue through the episode. But the A12Z, basically just the same processor. It's the easiest way to explain it. It's the A12X that's in the 2018 iPad Pros. However, it has all 8 graphics cores enabled. So in the 2018 iPad Pros, it does have 8 cores physically. It does. All 8 cores are there. The problem is only 7 are enabled, and the 8th is disabled. So the A12Z is the exact same processor. It's just with the extra core enabled. So a lot of us didn't really know if there was a difference. Like, realistically, the performance jump is very negligible. And even then, if any of you that currently have a 2018 iPad Pro, you know, you would know that, yeah, it's still, even though it's 2 years old, that tablet still outperforms many modern flagships because that chip is still ahead of its time, and it's a beast of a processor inside of it. So we're not going to stand here and pretend like that's a bad thing. But yes, this wasn't the big upgrade that we were expecting because, you know, we were expecting an A14. You know, that's what we were expecting. But we'll get onto that later, and I'll explain why it didn't happen here. And then obviously in terms of storages, the base model has finally been upgraded to 128. So that's amazing. I think that should have been done with the original, like instead of just base 64. So they got rid of the 64. They put 128, 256, 512, and 1 terabyte. And one thing that they did do that I actually told people that it would have been so awesome if they did with the 2018 iPad Pros is that you give the option of either more storage or more RAM, because as you guys all know, with the 2018 iPad Pro, only the 1 terabyte model was limited to the 6 gigs of RAM. You could only get the 6 gigabytes of RAM only if you bought the 1 terabyte model. And now, based on what we're told, every model of the new iPad Pro has 6 gigabytes of RAM. And I think that's amazing. So that means even the base model has the maxed out RAM, not the max storage, but you know, you're basically just paying for more storage at that point. That's all you're doing. And I think that's a great idea. I think that's phenomenal. I think that is one of the smartest things Apple could have done, was do that. And it made sense because people wanted the more RAM. And obviously, yes, with the more RAM, you're able to push these things much harder. Clearly you are. And even then, most applications don't really push these things very hard. Even video editing software like LumaFusion still doesn't push the iPad Pro very hard. So it's very interesting with what they did. I like these changes. They're very good. I think in a performance standpoint, it's going to help the iPad Pro more realistically. Granted, yes, I am a little bit salty because that's how it should have been from the get-go with the 2018 one, but I digress. And then we continue. We also end up seeing that they added a new update to iPad OS. They added update 13.4, which this actually brought mouse support to the iPad Pros, which a lot of people were really wanting, which granted, it was an accessibility feature, but it wasn't built, like, you get what I mean, is it wasn't built in exactly. It was more of a pseudo cursor or pseudo mouse support, trackpad support. And this time in 13.4, they actually added a cursor that, not the traditional cursor, but it does work as a cursor. So now you can use trackpads or mouses with your iPad Pro. And I think it's a great idea. I think, it's just pushing the iPad Pro more in this laptop replacement status, which at this point, I can personally testify that, yes, the iPad Pro has personally replaced my laptop use permanently. It has. Especially with my computer, I have no need for a beefy laptop anymore. And with the iPad Pro being as good as they are, it just makes no sense with all the updates they're getting. It doesn't make real logistical sense for me to buy a laptop anymore. Even though, yes, laptops are great. But for the use case that I have, it just makes more sense to get the iPad Pro. And this just adds more to it, and I think Apple's doing a great job of what they're doing with the iPad Pros. The mouse support was great. Trackpad support is going to be great because now cases are going to have trackpads on them, and yes, they are going to be more expensive now, but that's just part of the game. And that wasn't the only thing that Apple did, because yes, they added mouse and trackpad support, but you think Apple wasn't going to jump on that? Oh no, they were. So with the new iPad Pro, because these launched already. So the new iPad Pros, you can already buy these at starting price for the 11-inch. The base model is $799, and then the 12.9-inch base model is $999. But they also added the Magic Keyboard case, which this is a new case that Apple has designed for, obviously the new iPad Pros, but it also works with the 2018 iPad Pros. Keep that in mind. So this new Magic Keyboard is basically, they added the quote-unquote new scissor switches for the actual typing experience. They also made it a floating design, and they gave you another USB-C port. So that's actually really cool. And it floats. If you look at the picture, which I actually can't really post because, I can't really show you what this thing looks like, because it's weird. But it basically floats in the air while it's attached, and it basically looks like a Mac. And it's really cool. It's a really cool case. And I'm pretty excited for this because it looks really cool. Granted, yes, it's also based on the pictures. It looks, it looks backlit, but I cannot confirm that. So do not take my words as gospel. But it does obviously have the trackpad and everything, very integrated. It doesn't use Bluetooth. It uses the smart connectors. And I think the fact that it works with the older iPad Pros, like the one that I have, that's really cool because it really supports this idea, like, is this really worth it, Because in my opinion, this new iPad Pro doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You get what I'm saying? And some people have already shared this opinion to begin with. Like Henny loves the iPad Pro. He loves them because he uses them to make music. Like Henny is a multi-Grammy award-winning producer that makes all of his work on an iPad, and even Henny has come out and stated that he doesn't see a reason to upgrade. It doesn't make logical sense to upgrade. And he is right on that, in my opinion. Like, I share that same opinion, and I think it is the right opinion in this case because it doesn't make so much sense. Especially because the 2018 iPad Pro still performs incredibly well, and it's now heavily discounted as well. And the fact that the main upgrade is really this new keyboard case, which can be used on those older iPads, it really comes down to if you really care about, the, how would I put it? The upgraded specs. Because think about it, the A12Z is basically just an A12X with an extra graphics core. And even then, the 2018 iPad Pro still performs better than most modern basically every modern tablet. And at the same time, it still competes with many modern smartphones. Then we look at what? Like, okay, the base model gets more RAM, but still, even the 4 GB one that I have, 4 GB, 64 gigs of storage, is still very fast and very fluid. It doesn't really change the experience so much. Does it annoy me? Yes, it does. Like, a lot. But it's not that bad that it'll make me go out and upgrade. Especially because, the pricing, like I said, pricing is still the same. And the new cameras, I don't really care so much about taking photography on an iPad. Like, I don't really care about taking pictures on an iPad. I really don't. Like, I get it for some people. Hey, if you use this thing for work and you have to have that AR feature or to help improve measurements in the measurement app or stuff like that, then yes, that is great and everything. But for most people, I don't see people taking a lot of crazy photos with their iPads, like that's why we have smartphones, right? To me, the main upgrade is really the keyboard. And even then, this keyboard is expensive. Like, starting price for the 11-inch is $299. Like, that's a steep starting price, especially because if you're comparing to the normal Apple keyboards, that's a huge jump. And then obviously the 12.9 inch is $349.99. And that's insane. That's an insane asking price for this keyboard. It's an extreme premium. Because yes, it looks awesome. It just, we'll actually see when it comes out, because it's not out right now. It doesn't come out till May. And, we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out, But in my opinion, I don't really see the point of upgrading. As much as I love the iPad Pro and I always constantly advocate for the iPad Pro, I just don't see a reason to upgrade to this iPad Pro. And that's mainly because, as I alluded to, this may not be the only iPad Pro we get this year, because, many leaks and rumors have talked about we're getting a different iPad Pro. So the rumors were that later in the year, we will be getting a 5G iPad Pro, which, obviously, there has to be 5G because the new iPhones are going to be 5G. So there has to be a 5G iPad. And the rumor is that these 5G iPad Pros are going to have a new display. So, it's going to have a mini LED display. And it's also going to have the A14X processor. So there will be a big performance jump, a new display, and we will see something new. But even then, those rumors right now, they're kind of up in the air. We don't really know if it's true that we're going to get those iPads this year, or if they're going to be pushed back till next year, or maybe they might not even happen. And this really was the upgrade. And, a lot of people are disappointed, but I'd say if you're a first-time iPad Pro buyer, it just really depends. I would still recommend the 2018 one, because now that they're cheaper, you can get a higher storage option for less than the new ones, and the accessories are still all the same. The Apple Pencil is still the same. You can use the new keyboard case when it comes out with it. You can buy some of the older really great keyboard cases that come with this style of iPad Pro. And Logitech, think about it, Logitech is making their own keyboard case with a trackpad. Bridge is making their keyboard case. Now granted, I don't really like the Bridge one so much, but the Logitech one is the one that has me the most interested, because the Slim Folio Pro with the last gen iPad Pro, the 3rd gen, the one that I have, that's a great case. I personally said that is the best case that you could get for the iPad Pro if you really wanted a keyboard experience with it, because its keys were incredibly solid. It had the best typing experience out of all the keyboards. It had backlit keys, great battery life, and it provided great protection. Yes, it's not a slim case. It adds a bit of bulk. Like, your iPad weighs about if you have the 11-inch, it weighs about added together, it's 2 to 3 pounds. But even then, still, you get what I mean? Like, you're paying for security. That's what you're paying for. And it's even cheaper than the Apple case, than the stock, the Smart Folio keyboard case. And it has much better keys. It's just so much better. And the fact that Logitech said they're coming out with one for the new iPad Pros, but with its own trackpad, I have no doubt that case is going to be phenomenal. Now, granted, we have still yet to see it, but I'm interested to see what Logitech is able to pull out of their, bag of tricks for this one, But in my opinion, I just don't see the need to upgrade to this iPad. It just doesn't make a lot of logistical sense, if you get what I'm saying. Like, if you think about it on a fundamental level, you basically have the same iPad. I wouldn't say nothing has changed, but on a fundamental level, has anything really changed with what you're doing with it? You know, like, is there anything that is realistically changed that is making you utilize your iPad more than what you already did before, you know? Because if you're doing video editing and everything like that on an iPad, even then, I still wouldn't recommend this new iPad, because the 2018 one is able to do it without any issue to begin with. It was already able to edit and render 4K video with no issue. And it still does. The thing is 2 years old now. Like, and the processor in this iPad, the new iPad Pro, is basically the same processor. Like, I'm not trying to harp on this new iPad Pro, and I hope I'm not coming off that way, but I'm being honest and objective in this one, because it doesn't make so much sense. You know? It doesn't. And I think it bothers me a bit, you know? Because this doesn't make sense. Like, you're basically paying, again, for the same tablet. The only benefit you're getting is, you know, depending on your model, because like I said, if you already had the if you already had the 1 terabyte storage model, there's no point in touching this new iPad Pro. You do not need to touch it. Like, stay away. You already have the 6 GB RAMs. You have a much bigger storage option, and you pretty much have the same damn tablet. Like, I'm not trying to come off as like mean or harp on this new iPad Pro, but it's just the objective truth is it doesn't make sense. It just confuses me, you know, that Apple would go for, you know, minimal upgrades. Now, granted, great upgrades, and I think it's a great idea. I think, you know, especially in this time, look, the iPad doesn't really have any competition. It doesn't. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but yeah, Android tablets are crap compared to iPads. They are. Like, they're just straight garbage. And that's just objective truth, is they're just not as good. You do not get the same functionality you can get out of an iPad. Even though, yes, there are some pros and cons with the iPad, same thing with the Android tablets, but the iPad just stomps them. Like, in terms of performance, in terms of software features, in terms of the App Store, because the Apple App Store is incredible with how many good apps there are on it. It just provides more functionality. And some people said, try comparing it to the Surface Pros. And I'm like, well, yes, I love the Surface Pros. I think they're phenomenal. I think Microsoft has done an incredible job. But if we're comparing who's doing better, because think about it, the Surface Pros are basically laptops trying to be tablets, and the iPad is a tablet trying to be a laptop. And if we're comparing who's doing a better job, Apple is doing a better job in the tablet department than Microsoft, because the Surface Pro, the tablet, is not the best. It's not the best experience. I'll say that now. We can be honest about it. It's just not. The pen is not as good. Like, if we're comparing the Microsoft pen to the Apple Pencil is far better. And when we look at the overall, you know, feature set, the iPad does provide more. Now, granted, yes, the Surface Pro runs Windows, and Windows is incredibly good for a lot of engineering software. But even then, you're not going to be running engineering software on a Surface Pro to begin with. You get what I mean? It doesn't have the power to handle it. It's not meant to handle. And the iPad is able to do MacBook Pro and high-end laptop workloads like video editing and, you know, Photoshop and stuff like that on an iPad. It's a tablet that's able to do those things, and it's able to do that work. Now, granted, there's some workarounds you have to do, but you can work around it, and it's not so much of a hassle, because some people say, well, what about the accessories you have to buy? You still have to buy accessories for the Microsoft Surface Pros, and nobody complains about those. Like, you get what I mean? Like, you can't harp on the iPad for not having more than one USB port when the Surface Pro doesn't even have that many ports to begin with. You know? You can't harp on, like, this company for not having this when the other company's not even doing it either. Because you get what I mean? That's not being objective. That's being double standard. that means you're being biased. You're not being fair. And that's the reality with this case, is you have to look at the pros and cons of everything. And when you balance out pros and cons, yes, the iPad Pro is a better tablet than the Surface Pro. And on some levels, it's even a better laptop. And now that Apple's adding more functionality to the iPad Pro, you know, I honestly feel like Microsoft is a bit threatened. They are. But how does this relate to the current iPad that we're talking about? And the reality is that, yes, I think the upgrades are great, but I just think it just doesn't make sense to upgrade if you have an older iPad Pro, specifically the 2018 model. It doesn't make sense. And I would just hold off. If I were you, if you're somebody that has the 2018 iPad Pro, hold off, hold on to it, don't sell it, keep it, wait and see if we actually do get that big 5G one, because that's really the one that you're going to want to wait for, because that has a new display, the big new processor, and it makes sense to buy it because you're going to get a big upgrade. And if you don't own an iPad Pro and you're a student that's currently about to start college, or you need a high-end machine to basically do video editing and stuff like that on, that's portable, then I would look at the iPad Pro. I would look at the 2018 model, because now, since it's cheaper, like, think about it. I can pull it up right now. Like, my computer's right in front of me. I can pull up how much the 2018 iPad Pro costs right now. Like, I'm pulling it up. iPad Pro. Let me see if it'll actually pull it up for me. Let me see. I don't know if oh, please tell me they didn't get rid of it. Did they? Oof. I think they did. Okay. They did stop selling on the Apple website. So let me pull it up on Amazon real quick. iPad Pro. iPad Pro. Let's start with the 11-inch, because I think it just makes more sense to start with that one, iPad Pro 11-inch. Yeah. You can find a brand new iPad Pro, the 11-inch, on Amazon, like fully brand new, for 64 gigabytes for $699 starting off. If you want 500 and let me see which storage options they have. Yeah, the 512 option right now is $979, and the 1 terabyte model is $1,199. So respectable pricing for sure. And you can find it, like I said, you can even find it cheaper secondhand. If you can find a good one secondhand, hey, I'd go for that. But you get what I'm saying is you have options. And for the new iPad Pro buyers, like I said, you can go with the new one if you want, but it makes logical sense to just go with the 2018 one, because you can find it for much cheaper. Now, granted, if you own the 2018 iPad Pro like me, I would be more interested in the new keyboard. I will be testing that new keyboard when it comes out, and I'm going to be looking at reviews about it, testing it out for myself, and then coming to a judgment call on it, because it's the thing that has me the most excited, and a lot of people said it's the thing that has them the most excited. But we have to see it in action, and it won't come out till May, so we have time. But in my opinion, I love these new iPad Pros. I think they're great. I think for what Apple did, for the minimal upgrades that they did, they're good upgrades that are necessary. But in my opinion, if you already have a 2018 iPad Pro, it doesn't make sense to buy it. And if you don't have an iPad Pro, the 2018 iPad Pro just became an even better option, because now it's affordable. Now, granted, you can't buy straight from Apple, but that's a different thing, But aside from that, that's all I really have for you guys today. There's not really much I can say on this that I haven't already said. It's just wait and see, assess your options and think about it, because I can't tell you what to do. I can only give my recommendations. My recommendation is the 2018 iPad Pro is looking much better now, but it's your call. You're the ones that make the decisions. But let me know what you guys think. If you guys really like the new iPad Pros, what do you like about them? Do you think that I may be, not just me, but do you think everybody is just underselling this performance upgrade, or is it really worth, buying? You guys can let me know your thoughts and opinions. And like I said, I made this very clear. This is all my opinion. This is not gospel truth, but it's my opinion. But I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you guys for coming back and listening to today's episode. It really means a lot to me. Obviously, now we're back on a more consistent schedule because the computer works. I have my computer to begin with, and now I'm able to edit freely whenever I want. So that's all I have for you guys. I love you guys to death. Thank you guys so much for everything you've done, for constantly sharing, constantly downloading. Keep doing that. It really means a lot to me. And I will see you guys next week. I love you guys. Please be safe. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay indoors, wash your hands, be respectful people, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.